Well, good afternoon, math nerds. So here we go with Unit 2 practice test. And the best way to get ready for a test is to practice. Practice, practice, practice all the time. The more practice, the better off you're going to be. All right, so number one, we are adding polynomials. And so basically what you're going to do is combine like terms. So be careful looking at the exponents on the first two terms in these two polynomials. You have 6x to the third and 12x squared. Those are not like terms. So if you were going to do this in a horizontal format, basically what you're going to do is look for the largest exponent in the whole problem, which would be x to the third, and see if there's any other x cubed terms. Well, there's not. So we just bring down 6x to the third. That just comes down. And I'm going to cross them off as I go so I know I've got them all. The next exponent down is 12x squared. So there's no other x squared terms, so we bring down plus 12x squared. And it's a plus there because sorry about that. That message always pops up. Anyway, the 12x squared is positive. It's a plus sign because the 12x squared is positive. So that's gone. Now, the next terms down are just the plain old x's. We have 8x minus 9x. So 8 minus 9 would be negative 1x. Now remember, when you're putting your answer into WebAssign, it does not like that coefficient of 1. So I'll show you how they want it written in just a second. And then the last terms, the negative 8 and the positive 6, negative 8 plus 6 would be negative 2. So when you write your answer in, type it in, to WebAssign, you're going to have 6x cubed plus 12x squared minus x. Eliminate that 1. They don't like that coefficient. And then minus 2. And that would be your final answer. Okay, number 2. Now on this one, we're subtracting polynomials. So you have to be careful because with subtraction, you're basically doing same, change, opposite, just like you would with plain old integers. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to keep the first polynomial the same, okay? 9y squared minus y plus 7. That just comes down. All right, and then I'm going to change that subtraction sign to an addition. So it's going to become plus, and we're going to take the opposite of every term in the second polynomial. So that's going to become positive 5, negative 5y, and a positive 7y squared. So now this one, I want to do this one in the vertical format just to show you how you can do the problem in a different way. So basically in the vertical format, what you do is you take the second polynomial and you put it up underneath the first one. But you have to make sure that like terms are underneath each other. So the first term in the first polynomial is 9y squared. So I want to put the 7y squared up underneath that term, 7y squared. So the y squareds are on top of each other. So that one's been taken care of. Now, it's almost like we're having to work backwards on this one because of the way they put it in here. All right, so now if you look at negative 5y, that's going to go underneath the negative y. So those are like terms. They line up. And then positive 5 is going to go up underneath the 7. So that keeps them all in one. It's in descending order, and the like terms are on top of each other. So now you just add the coefficients. So 9 and 7 is 16y squared. The exponents stay the same. Remember, this negative y has a coefficient of 1. So negative 1 and negative 5 is negative 6y. And 7 plus 5 would be positive 12. And that would be your answer. All right, number 3, we have another subtraction problem. So remember, keep the first one the same. Okay, we're still doing same, change, opposite. Okay, the first one stays the same, 8x. Now, the sign in the middle of the subtraction becomes addition. Change that and take the opposite of everything in the second polynomial. So that becomes a negative x squared and a positive 12x. So I'm going to do this one in the vertical format also. So the negative x squared is going to come up underneath the x squared from the second polynomial, and then 12x is going to go underneath the negative 8x, and we're going to add them up. Well, x squared and negative x squared, those cancel. They're completely gone. So if you have an x squared term in your answer, it's wrong. X minus x, or x squared minus x squared, is 0. Negative 8x plus 12x, that's going to just be 4x. So your answer is just 4x. All right, number 4 and 5 are very confusing, especially number 5. Number 4, that is in parentheses, so that is a negative 4 squared. So you work out negative 4 times negative 4, okay? And a negative times a negative is a positive 16. Now, number 5 is the hard one. This is so hard to keep in your head and keep it straight. Basically, what this is saying is because it's not in parentheses, it is the opposite of 4 squared. And that is so hard to keep straight. So, what you're doing is you're keeping the opposite sign out front and you're squaring just a 4. If they wanted you to square a negative 4, it would be written like number 4 that we just did. So here, when there's no parentheses, the opposite sign must stay out in front, okay? So you have the opposite of 16, which would be negative 16. Now, that's a lot. If you can just remember this, if there are no parentheses, so if no parentheses, the answer is always negative, all the time, no matter what. So if you can remember that and just think, okay, no parentheses, I'm bringing that sign into my answer, and what's 4 times 4? 16, okay? So that is something that so many people get wrong on the test, so please go over that and make sure you practice on that problem. Number 6. So here we're getting into our exponent rules. There's 5 exponent rules that you need to know for this test. The first one is when you multiply, if it's a multiplication problem, you're going to add the exponents, okay? So these are exponent, I should give myself more room, exponent rules. Multiply, you add. If you're dividing, you subtract. If you raise a power to another power, you multiply the exponents, okay? Let's see what else. Negative exponents, they have to go to the bottom to become positive, so you're going to write it as a fraction, okay? And if it's negative on the bottom, it has to go to the top. And the last thing is anything to the 0 power equals 1. So that's 5 rules. When you multiply, you add. When you divide, you subtract. A power to another power, you multiply. Negative exponents go to the bottom. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So what you need to do is memorize those. You've got to know those rules. That's going to help you for most of Chapter 2's test. And, you know, if you are taking your test and you take it from your head, not a cheat sheet, from your head to your scratch paper as soon as you start the test, that is not cheating. Now, if you have it written on the paper before you start your test, that is cheating. So make sure that you get those rules memorized in your head. All right, so look at number 6. This is a multiplication problem. So the first thing you do is you go ahead and you multiply the coefficients, the big numbers. 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. But since it's multiplication, we're going to add the exponents. Okay, so a we've got to the third, and over here we have like a little 1. So that's going to be a to the 4th. And then add the b's. 2 plus 5 would be b to the 7th. And that's the answer there. Number 7, it's a division problem. So the rule is, for division, subtract the exponents. So 9 minus 4 would be m to the 5th, and then 7 minus 5 would be n squared. Okay? All right. Now, number 8, we're getting into looking at a power to another power because you've got this whole product in there, the negative 2x squared, and all of that is to the third power. So here, whenever you've got an exponent on the outside to the right-hand side of the parentheses, anything that doesn't have an exponent, you want to put a little 1 there to remember that it does have an exponent. And what we're going to do is we're going to distribute that 3 to those exponents on the inside. So we're going to have negative 2, I'm keeping it in parentheses because it started in parentheses, and then you multiply 1 times 3 to the third, so negative 2 to the third, and x 2 times 3 would be 6. So now what you have to do is you have to work out negative 2 to the third, which you multiply that 3 times, and we have x to the 6 just keeps coming down. So negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, and 4 times negative 2 would be negative 8x to the 6. So be careful and make sure that you treat the coefficients just like they're variables. The rules apply to them the same way they do to variables. Okay? Number 9. Excuse me. So here we have a multiplication, but we also have an exponent on the outside there, that 3. So we have to distribute that 3 to all the exponents inside the second parentheses first. So right now we're just going to bring down negative 3y. We're not messing with it. And if I distribute the outside 3 to all the exponents on the inside, we're going to have negative 4 to the third, x to the 6, and y, 3 times 3, would be 9. Okay? So, now, before we do anything with the negative 3y, we need to work out negative 4 to the third. So I'm going to do that up here just to save some space. So I'm going to multiply negative 4 3 times. That's going to give me negative 64. And x to the 6 and y to the 9th, they just come down. All right, so now it's a multiplication problem like we did earlier. So remember, when you multiply, you have to multiply the coefficients, the big numbers. So a negative times a negative is going to be a positive. And let's see, what the heck is 3 times 64? 12, carry a 1, 192. Okay? And now we're going to add the exponents because it's a multiplication problem. So remember, you've got a 1 here on the y, and you usually put them in alphabetical order. So we're going to do x to the 6. No other x's, so that just comes down. And 1 and 9 on the y's adds up to y to the 10th. And there's your final answer. Okay, number 10, we have exponents outside both sets of parentheses. So we're going to have to distribute the 3 to all the exponents in the first parentheses and the 2 to all the exponents in the second parentheses. So, here we go. We're going to have negative 2 to the third, because 1 times 3, a to the third, and b to the third. Okay. And then on the second one, you're going to have negative 3 to the second, a to the second, and b to the second. So we multiplied all those exponents by 2. So now work out the exponents. Negative 2 to the third. Remember, that's negative 2 multiplied 3 times. That's going to be negative 8, a to the third, and b to the third. My 3's look really messy. Sorry about that. All right, negative 3 squared. Negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. And the variables just come down, a squared and b squared. All right, so now it's a multiplication problem. So we multiply negative 8 times 9. That's negative 72. And you add your exponents, a to the 5th and b to the 5th. And there you go. All right, number 11. This is the last exponent rule. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So that whole term, a, b to the third, all of that to the 0 power just equals 1. So be careful. Make sure you memorize that rule. Okay, number 12. Now we're going to start getting into negative exponents, so you have to be careful. When you look at number 12, it's a division problem, so the rule is you have to subtract. Well, 6 minus 13 gives you a to the negative 7. But remember, the rule is you cannot leave a negative exponent in your answer. You must write it as a fraction, and it has to go to the bottom to become positive. So that's going to be equal to 1 over a to the 7th. And remember, when it goes to the bottom, it becomes positive. Very important. Okay? A lot of people, when they subtract, they have a hard time thinking about, well, is it on the top or the bottom? How do I know where to put it? Look at the original problem. The exponents 6 and 13, the biggest exponent to begin with is the 13, and it's on the bottom. That's where the a has to be, is where the bigger exponent started. So that's just a good way to double check to make sure your variable is in its right position. Okay? Now, number 13, we're going to once again, we've got a power to a power, product, this whole product to a power. I'm going to put a 1 on that 8, and we're going to distribute the 2 to all the exponents. So we're going to have 8 to the 2nd, and I'm not worrying about parentheses because the 8's a positive. Okay, you can still put it in parentheses if you want to. Okay, if I multiply the x exponents, that's going to be negative 2, and y, negative 2 times 2 would be negative 4. Now, if you stop and just look at your answer so far, you can see exactly what's going to go where. The 8 is to a positive 2. That's going to stay on top. The x and the y are both negative exponents. They have to go to the bottom. So if you just kind of stop and, look at what you've got left, it's going to make things a lot easier. So I'm going to keep 8 squared on top in the numerator, and the x squared and the y to the 4th are going to go to the denominator, to the bottom, and when they do, they become positive. And then your last step would be to square the 8, which would be 64, and then you'd have x squared and y to the 4th, and that would be your final answer. All right, number 14, I think personally, is the hardest problem on the test, and it's all because of the 4 with the negative 3 out here. That is a big pain in the butt, and I'm going to show you how to hopefully keep it straight, but gosh, this is a hard problem. So we don't have an exponent outside in the first term, so we're going to keep that the same, negative 2ab to the negative 3. And just bring that down. Now, I need to put a 1 on the 4 and on the b. And I'm going to distribute negative 3, the exponent outside, to all the exponents inside. So I'm going to have 4 to the negative 3, right? 1 times negative 3. Okay, a, negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. And b, we're going to multiply and get negative 3. All right, here's the hardest part. So many people want to multiply negative 2 times 4. Totally wrong. The 4 is to the negative 3, which means it has to go to the bottom. See, that's where everybody screws up. So just looking at just the coefficients, okay, the negative 2, technically that exponent, that's to the first power. Okay, that's a big number. It can be negative. Okay, so that's going to stay on top. Just looking at just the coefficients, I'm going to have negative 2 on top, but the 4 to the negative 3, that's going to have to go to the bottom to get rid of that negative exponent. And that is what makes this problem so nasty. All right, now look at the variables. I have a to the first, a1, steak sauce, a1 and a9. So I'm going to add those. That's going to give me a to the 10th. Now notice, I didn't put them on the top or bottom with those. I'm just going to leave them for now. They're in limbo, okay? Look at the b. If I add negative 3 and negative 3, I'm going to have b to the negative 6. Now it's easier to see where the a and b are going to go. The a is to a positive exponent. It's got to go top. The b is to a negative. It's got to go to the bottom. So the fraction is over here, the negative 2, okay? And the 4 we're going to work out in a second. So you're going to have a to the 10th up on top, okay? And then 4 to the 3rd, if you work out 4 times 4 times 4, that gives you 64, okay? And the b is going to come to the bottom to become positive. Now, if you've gotten that far, boy, you're more than halfway home. That's the worst part of the whole problem, is getting that 4 on the bottom, the 4 to the third. Your last step is now you can reduce the negative 2 over 64. 2 goes into both of those, so if we divide the top and bottom by 2, now remember, WebAssign does not like that coefficient of 1, so you have to keep the negative sign, because negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Just don't write the coefficient. Negative a to the 10th, and then 64 divided by 2 is 32, b to the 6th. And that, my friends, is your final answer. That is a nasty problem. Only math nerds like that. And I don't even really like that problem. It's kind of nasty. All right, number 15. So now the rest of the test is not as bad, which is good. We're going to distribute now. So you just have to remember that when you multiply, you add your exponents. So 2x times 6x squared is going to be 12. And add the exponents. Remember, there's a 1 there. That didn't even show up. A 1. That's going to make it x to the third. And then 2x times negative 8x would be negative 16. And x would be x squared. Those are not like terms, so you're done. We do the same thing on number 16, except that we're going to have to multiply 3 times. So negative 2x squared times 9x squared would be negative 18x to the fourth, because you add the 2 and 2. Now we have negative 2x squared times negative 5x. That's going to be positive 10x to the third. And a negative 2x squared times negative 7. A negative times a negative, positive 14, and make sure you bring down the x squared, because even though it doesn't have anything to get added with, it's still part of your answer there, still part of the term. Those are not like terms, so that's it. Now, 17 and 18 are FOIL problems. Remember, first, outer, inner, last. So a lot of students go, oh, I can't do FOIL. It's like if you can distribute, you can do FOIL. So it's the same thing. Don't freak out. So here's the first and the outer, and then the inner and the last. That's what we're going to do. So b times b, that's the first. It's going to be b squared. The outer term, b times 6, is going to be positive 6b. The inner term, negative 8 times b, is negative 8b. And the last term, negative 8 times 6, is negative 48. So now you combine like terms. You've got like terms here with the b's. So b squared comes down. 6b minus 8b would be negative 2b, or not 2b, a little bit of Shakespeare, minus 48. And there's your answer. Okay, so same thing on number 18. 3b times 5b is going to be 15b squared. That's the first terms. Then we do the outer. We're distributing the 3b. That's all we're doing. So that's going to be negative 27b. All right. Now you go back with the 13. Those are the inner. 13 times 5b is positive 65b. And 13 times negative 9 is negative something. Let's see. 27, carry a 2, negative 117. Ugh, who writes this stuff? Okay, so 15b squared comes down. Now I have to subtract and borrow. Oh my gosh. 65 minus 27. What the heck is that? It's going to be positive. 15 minus 7 is 8. So that's a 5. 38b, I hope that's right, minus 117. That's what I get for not bringing in a calculator. All right, on we go. Number 19, you will only have one really long multiplication problem like this on the test. And it's not a really hard problem. It's not real difficult. It's just long and easy to get lost. So what you're doing is you're going to take the 4x times every single term in the second parentheses. And then you're going to do the same thing with the negative 2. So you're just distributing. It's just a long problem. So 4x times x squared is going to be 4x to the third, because remember there's a 1 there. Then 4x times negative 3x is negative 12x squared, because there's a 1 there, and 4x times 4 would be positive 16x. And no, you're not done yet. That's wishful thinking. All right, now you go back and you take negative 2 times all the terms. So negative 2 times x squared would be negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times negative 3x would be positive 6x. And a negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. So we have this big long line of beautiful terms. So now you're going to combine like terms. Well, 4x cubed, there's no other x cubed term. So that comes down, 4x cubed. Okay. Ugh, my 3's are horrible. All right, then we have negative 12 and negative 2x squared, both of them x squares. So that's going to be negative 14x squared. Okay? And then we have 16x and 6x. They're both positive, so you add those. Positive 22x, and the last term, minus 8, just comes down. So there's your answer. All right, 20 and 21, more FOIL, because when it says expand then multiply, what they want you to do is write that twice. Okay, because it's squared. So we have 2a minus 7b times itself. Okay, so 2a times 2a is 4a squared. And then 2a times negative 7b would be negative 14ab. Just write them beside each other, so don't freak out about two different variables. All right, and then you do the inner negative 14ab. If you write BA, that's fine, but you just need to make sure you know they're the same. So BA and AB, same thing. And the last term, negative 7b times negative 7b, is positive 49, and be careful here, b squared, because you have b and b. All right, so we have like terms in the middle. 4a squared comes down. Negative 14 and negative 14 is negative 28ab, the variables stay the same, plus 49b squared. And that's your answer. And that's one of those weird ones where you leave the a squared and the b squared on the ends. I know that looks weird to y'all, but that's the correct way to write it. Okay? Same thing, we're going to do the same thing with number 21. We're going to write x plus 4y times itself. Anytime you have a binomial, two terms, squared, you write it twice and you just do FOIL. So much easier. All right, so x times x is x squared. Draw a line there. And then we have x times 4y would be positive 4xy. Now we go back and distribute the 4y, so that would be positive 4xy. And then 4y times 4y is positive 16y squared. Just barely fit that in. All right, so you've got like terms here in the middle. X squared comes down. 4xy plus 4xy is a positive 8xy plus 16y squared. And that's your final answer. All right, number 22. One more FOIL problem. So there's a lot of FOIL on this test. Please make sure you know how to do it. So the first term, 4x times 4x, is 16x squared. And then 4x times 6 is a positive 24x. Now go back with the inner terms. Negative 6 times 4x is negative 24x. And negative 6 times 6 is negative 36. So you're going to combine like terms in the middle. You got these two like terms. 16x squared comes down. 24x minus 24x, those completely cancel out. They're gone. So we just bring down minus 36. And that's it. That's one of those special products, but you don't need to worry about it. Just if you just do FOIL, you're going to get the right answer. Now, number 23, this is where we divide the two terms on top by the monomial that's on the bottom in the denominator. So we're going to have 25y to the 6th over negative 5y to the 3rd, and then minus 30y to the 3rd over negative 5y to the 3rd. So we're dividing both of them by the term on the bottom. So be careful of your signs. 25 divided by negative 5 is negative 5. And remember, when you divide, subtract your exponents. So that's going to be y to the 3rd. Okay? Now, be very careful of signs here. That sign in the middle actually goes with the 30. So negative 30 divided by negative 5 is a positive 6. So be so careful there, very careful. And look at the y cubes. Well, anything divided by itself, they cancel out. So your answer is just those two terms, negative 5y cubed plus 6. All right, number 24. And on these, I'm just going to be lazy and just put the x up underneath because it's underneath each term now. So we're going to divide 7x squared divided by x. Remember, subtract your exponents, so that's just going to be 7x. Okay? Then minus the 2 is just going to come down, and the x's, x divided by x, that cancels out. Okay? Now the last term people get wrong because they mess with it. You can't do any simplifying to 1 over x. So you leave it exactly that way. It just stays as a fraction. So a lot of people get that last term wrong, so be careful about that. All right, number 25, the last problem, yay! I'm going to be lazy again, what a big surprise, and just write 4ab underneath all the terms, okay? So now we're going to divide. 32 divided by 4 is 8. A squared over a is just a. And the b's are just going to cancel out. Now, this next term, everybody screws up. You bring down the plus sign. Well, what's 4ab divided by 4ab? Anything divided by itself is 1. And everybody says, oh, that's just gone. No, it's not. It's canceled, but it cancels to 1. And if you don't write the 1 there, your answer is wrong. One thing to remember, there's 3 terms on top of the problem. You have to have 3 terms in your final answer. So if you don't have that 1 there, it's wrong. Now, we have minus 12 divided by 4 is 3. And the a's, a over a, those cancel. And if we subtract the b's, we just have b. So there's your answer, 8a plus 1 minus 3b. Now, excuse me, so sorry. That's it for the Unit 2 practice test. So good luck on the test. If you practice, especially the practice test in WebAssign, over and over a million times, you will do great, okay? Do great, have a great test, and I'll see you soon. Bye.